Nicole Scott here from Mobile Geeks, and here we are at the Intel Bloggerhutten at IFA 2013. And I have something very exciting for you today because we have Ben Saunders, who's going on the Scott expedition. How are you today, Ben?
I am very well, thank you. I love blogger. Is it Bloggerhutten?
Bloggerhutten.
I love that.
I think we're trashing the German language right now, but it's okay.
I'm very, very happy to be here in Berlin. Yeah.
So the reason why I'm really excited to talk to Ben today is because he's heading on a 4-month expedition to the North Pole, and he's planning not on breaking his devices. How are you planning on doing that?
That's a very good question. In fact, the North Pole was the last trip, so this one is Antarctica, other pole, but it is also equally cold. So we are the two of us on the expedition. We are in Antarctica for 110 days, so nearly 4 months, and we're taking 2 Ultrabooks with us. So that's how we are communicating with the outside world via satellite phone, sending back every day blogging, we're updating social media, we're sending back photos and video and text. So looking after technology is an important part of it. And when we first started talking to Intel and said, look, this is what we want to do, this is what we want to do with 2 Ultrabooks, they said, oh, we're not sure they're going to work at like minus 40. I think they kind of thought we'd be sort of pulling them out in a storm, and then mittens on, kind of bashing around it. And actually, we only really use the Ultrabooks in the evening in the tent, where it's relatively civilized. You're obviously out of the wind, out of the elements. We'll be in our sleeping bags. We'll probably have the stove going, so it'll be relatively warm. minus 15, minus 20 maybe. And Intel have been testing for more than 10 weeks now. Been testing a number of Ultrabooks in Swindon in the UK. They have a cold chamber, and they've been doing sort of cycles of taking them down to minus 40 overnight, thawing them out again during the day, testing them in the lab, running loads of tests on the Ultrabooks, freezing them again for more than 70 days now, and they're doing extraordinarily well. So the Ultrabooks we're taking are completely standard. We've beefed up things like the connectors and the power cables. We're using low temperature cable, obviously specially made battery packs, solar panels. But the Ultrabooks themselves are completely standard, and so far they seem to have stood up really well to some pretty abusive testing.
That's amazing. I actually remember breaking my very first PDA, and because I left it in my car when I went snowboarding, and I came back and the screen was never quite the same. So I mean, cold weather damage to your electronics is definitely. I'm from Canada, so yes, you said something you have to consider. Yeah. So what exactly are you going to be doing during the day?
Well, during the day we are heading south. So the plan very simply is to make a return journey to the South Pole on foot. So we're going from the coast of Antarctica to the South Pole and all the way back to the coast again. We are wearing skis, wearing harnesses, and dragging sleds. In fact, you can see there's a mock-up on the sleds in there, but they're great big long sleds because we're dragging with us nearly 4 months of food and supplies, and obviously all the tech gear, solar panels, batteries, everything goes with it. So we are travelling on foot. We'll be averaging probably about 9 hours a day of actually moving. And stopping every 90 minutes to eat and drink, but really just trying to cover as much ground as we can. And then in the evening, as soon as we have the tent up, that's when we can start sending back the story from that day.
Secretly I was hoping you were going to say we're going to build snowmen all day.
Yeah, well, maybe when we're not, so we'll turn the cameras off and we kind of play around a bit. Actually, one of the things we have to do, we were training in Greenland earlier this year, which is, even though it's the northern hemisphere versus the south, Greenland is very similar in terms of the climate and the terrain and the environment, and it's a really good place to go for a kind of dress rehearsal for Antarctica. And it was so windy and so stormy at times that we had to practice building walls of snow break to keep the tent out of the wind. So there is a bit of playing around in the snow, but we haven't yet built a snowman. Maybe at some point.
Well, if you haven't built or slept in an igloo once in your life, I really think you're missing out on something for sure.
Absolutely.
So this is your first trip that's sponsored by Intel with Ultrabooks.
Absolutely, yes it is. Yeah.
So on your previous trip to the North Pole, did you have any interesting technical disasters?
We had some interesting tech that in some ways was very old school. I mean, my very first expedition was in 2001. At that point, there was no satellite phone network that covered the North Pole, so we used radio. There were 2 of us for 2 months on the ice, but had almost no communication with the outside world at all. So to have gone from that to 2003, 2004, satellite phones started working up there. We could use very basic. The laptops at that time were so big and so heavy. The batteries died instantly in the cold. They were just useless. So we actually used. Funny you mentioned PDA. We had a really, really old school. I think it was a compact iPad. It was ancient, 1998 something, with a stylus, and you'd write it through. So we managed to get that talking to satellite phones. So we could send using the PDA just like little bits of text and little photographs So to have just to have gone from that to using Ultrabooks now, which don't weigh much more. I mean, this one here is less than 900 grams. And to have the processing power, this has got 9 hours of battery life. It's got the processing power to edit video from our tent, high definition footage, send that back via telephone. So the technology now, and the amount of stuff we can do from our sleeping bags, to send back the story as it unfolds in that kind of detail and definition, is no one's been able to do that before, and it's purely thanks to this technology.
Excellent. So where can we follow you, and when do you leave?
Well, it's called the Scott Expedition. So everything is Scott Expedition. So scottexpedition.com. We are Scott Expedition on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Google+, all that stuff. So there's lots of content out there, and we will be sending back content every day from the ice. So there'll be a chance, hopefully in a few different ways, to actually interact with us, with Tarka and me, when we're out there. You can ask us questions. We can try and answer them. So it should be a fairly interactive journey as well.
Excellent. Well, be prepared for some abuse from me for snowmen and snow angel requests.
Yeah. No, we will do that.
Excellent. So this is Ben Saunders heading on the Scott Expedition, and I'm Nicole Scott from Mobile Geeks.